All right, I think we're live, aren't we?
I believe so.
All right, well, welcome, foodies, everybody of all types. This is Professor Porkloin, aka Dr. Chef Hubs, and we're coming in with my co-host here.
The Meat Viking.
So last week we did part one of beer, where we kind of talked about, your pilsners, your lagers, your ales, and things like that. So we wanted to continue on with our beer adventure, and we're going to start talking about some porters and stouts today, which are, in my opinion, my favorite type of beers. I don't know about yours, but mine are definitely the porters and the stouts. So we figure we can continue on with our journey and learn a little bit, and then you can find out some of the things that might pair well with the beers that we talk about, and then some of our favorites too. But
Yeah, buddy.
just to start it off, man, what's in your cup?
So I actually have two things today because it's that time of year. Last episode, we talked about some beers, and this is kind of a seasonal cider from Cider Boys. It's called Mad Bark,
Okay.
and it's an apple cinnamon cider.
We haven't talked about ciders yet, so maybe that could be another episode later on down the road.
Right. But anyways, I just got done cutting wood in the back, and so let me drink some apple juice real quick. But the beer that I'm going to be drinking today, I have Founder's Breakfast Stout, which is a double chocolate coffee oatmeal stout.
I have had that Founders before. That's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
What's the ABV on that one again?
I want to say, you know what? I think I actually got it pulled up right here.
I think it's like 9%.
8.3.
Yeah, it was close. 9.
Yeah. With according to the website to Founders, it's got a beer rating of 100. Available year round. IBUs. What's IBUs?
That's the bitterness of it.
It's got a bitterness of 60.
Yeah. So if bitterness units is essentially what it is. So the higher the number, the more bitter it's going to be.
Right.
So he's cracking that bad boy open.
I am. And we're going to, of course, put it in our lovely mug that we have for sale.
So while he's doing that, I'll certainly tell you I got the rum and Coke in mine today. No beer. But I did have beer last week. So, and I think for our safe word for today is going to be barley.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be also pretty close to what we're going to talk about. So obviously we're going to have to be close with that one. So you know what? Before we even start, how about you give us a little taste test and you kind of tell us what you think of that Founders?
Well, since I have essentially the head of the beer right now, and I need to let this settle for a little bit before I take a test out of that. I got a little bit left in this bottle.
Okay.
That I will get before I glorify you all with foam beer mustache.
So now this is a double chocolate stout again, right?
Double chocolate oatmeal. Double chocolate coffee oatmeal stout.
Coffee. Okay. So.
And you definitely, when you first take a sip of it, you do get that chocolatey feel. It's got an aftertaste that kind of lingers on the tongue of your coffee taste, which I like. And then it's almost like an aftertaste is when I get that oatmeal.
Okay. So you get chocolate on the front and then you get the oatmeal on the back end.
Mm-hmm. And it's also got like, if you smell it, it's got like a very coffee, like oatmeal smell to it.
So you weren't like a fancy wine snob and you didn't like swirl it around and take a big whiff and
what this episode is about today.
No, but you know what? If you're going to do beer, it's always good to at least smell and get all the stuff, kind of like what a wine connoisseur would do too.
Right.
Just so that you can get those notes of the coffee or the oatmeal or the, chocolate, whatever you're going to be drinking. And you can do that with other things too. You just don't have to do it with coffee stouts or beers.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of where you get that flavor from too. So
now if you were, you know how like they've got beer flights and stuff.
Oh yeah.
So are you the kind of person that when you get like a new expensive beer, you pour it in a snifter first and like swash it around and then wash it down with like ice water?
No, if I do a flight, I just have it there and I'll just drink whatever it is. I'm not gonna cleanse my palate with sherbet or some crap like that to make sure that I get the best flavor of everything.
You're like, yeah, this stout's real nice, but you know what? I need some ginger to clean my palate before I move on to this lager next.
Yeah. No, whenever I do any type of flights, I'm just like, okay, give me X, Y, and Z. And if I do see a lot more porters and stouts, I'll get those more than the lagers or ales. But I'm not partial if I'm getting a flight because then I get to try new beers anyway.
Right.
So yeah, it definitely. I'm not that much of a snob when it comes to that.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of going along when you were talking about that with the beer, just a little bit of some history about what I realized about porters and stouts. So it's really interesting. I kind of looked up to see what the big difference of, because I always drank them and I was like, oh yeah, they have their, the malts and everything, and what really is the difference. But some background of porters. So porters were originally the stuff in England back around the 18th century when the Industrial Revolution was going on. Because what was happening is that they were getting a new malt that was coming into the city.
Mm-hmm.
So they were getting this darker malt. And they were kind of doing their traditional brewings with everything because they did a lot of ales back then. And this brown malt was starting to age a little bit longer. And a lot of the bar patrons called it stale.
Huh.
Which is kind of funny, because a lot of people they definitely were preferring a bit of an age in their beers, and a lot of them asked them to blend several things together. So I could imagine I've done that before, where I have taken two separate beers. I think it was a lager and and an ale or something. I'd have to look back at my notes, and then had essentially three different beers, because then I was like, okay, here's one, and then we're going to combine the two. So essentially they were just going on with this new brown beer. And what's really interesting about this is that stouts come from porters. So I found that to be very interesting, that kind of that whole entire thing of all porters are essentially, or all stouts are essentially porters, but not all porters are stouts, that whole thing going on, because essentially they were creating what was called a porter stout, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these brewers in the countryside, they had a lot of hoppy beers and strong ales. So when they brought them over to London, they're getting more. So it was really interesting to kind of hear about some of that stuff and say, I didn't even think.
1 second, I'm actually looking up something, because you had brought up the idea of mixing two beers together.
Yeah.
To make like a third beer. And I was trying to look for a recipe when I lost you there for, in Toledo, they were called beer smoothies, but they weren't like smoothie text at all. It was when you took like a Guinness and a Blue Moon together. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, no, yeah, you can have black and tan. Yeah, you can have the black and tan, or there's a bunch of different ones. You can have Blue Moon, you can have lager, you can have ale, you can have cider, like that's another one.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, there's plenty of ways that you can combine the two to a variety of different beers and create a new beer. But
right,
was not layering them. Mine was literally mixing the two together.
Whereas this method was layering, correct? The method that I was thinking of.
Yeah. And I mean, you get the cool little thing when you pull the glass over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's layering. So your light beer on the bottom, and then you would slowly put the dark beer on top.
Yeah. And I will just say this to all the foodies out there. I do highly recommend layering a cider and a Guinness. That is a very good drink, in my opinion.
Yeah, but it takes a little bit of some time in order to layer that beer.
Oh yeah, no,
you need to get a spoon. You need to put that on the side, slowly pour it out.
Yeah, You're gonna be there for a bit, so like if you're thirsty, don't worry about it. But if you want to try something different, I'd recommend trying it.
Yeah. So some other things about the porter and the stout though, because I was rudely interrupted by my internet, which is dumb.
That'll happen sometimes.
So essentially, yeah, essentially what they did is they took some of that brown malt and they wound up roasting it, and they basically created black malt. So they wound up going through that and using the black malt, and that's where you get that darker color for the beer. And obviously around that time is when Guinness started coming around, and they created what was called a stout. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously the most famous stout, Guinness. I mean, you can't go wrong with that. And then that's where, if you look at there was one where they were designing beers, and they had two different porters, and they had a double X, and then they reserved that stuff to export to the Caribbean, which I didn't know, which was really interesting. But essentially around 1800s is when you get that extra stout porter. And then really in the mid 1800s is when stout kind of just emerges your standard beer. So again, you would have your porters, and that's where it came from. And then stouts kind of came from the porters, and then they just eventually became their own category. So
Hell yeah. Huh.
yeah, which is really interesting. I didn't even think about knowing some of that stuff. And I've brewed beer numerous times. I've brewed porters and stouts, and I just never, because I'd always get a chocolate porter or raspberry porter or, stout, whatever it was. So,
Mm-hmm. Now,
but
as
yeah,
somebody
the
who's
short
as somebody who's brewed
go
these,
for it.
what one would you say is easier to brew out of the stout or the porter, but what one do you prefer to brew?
Well, they're both, but I feel as if you're going when you go to bottle it, that's where the more difficult thing is, because a lot of the times with stouts you need the CO2,
Mm-hmm.
or you'll use the nitrogen, and so porters are a lot easier overall. But I like drinking the stouts though.
Okay. So, is there any in that brewing process? Because I pulled up a little something that basically said what the main difference was. And this is coming from Vine Pair website. It's the difference between porter and stout. It's complicated. Just kind of reading through the article a bit, is that the only main difference most brewers still agree on is the kind of malt that should be used to brew each type of beer. Well, porters will take a malted barley. Stouts are primarily made from unmalted roasted barley, which is where you get your coffee flavor from.
Yep.
So, I mean, I'm assuming that holds true in your experience as well.
True. So one of the things that I kind of looked at too was that there's different types of stouts.
Okay.
Did you know that? There's a dry stout. Yeah. There's a dry stout. There's a sweet or milk stout. There's an oatmeal stout, a foreign stout, and an imperial stout.
Ooh.
So
I'm pretty sure I've had an imperial stout before.
I have had multiple ones before, and I just didn't know that was the big difference. So I guess I'm showing my not my beer intelligence then by not knowing that there was a bunch of different types.
I mean, well, and like, it seems like every year to every other year, there's a new thing being made. Like, for instance, last year, what was real big was the seltzers.
Yeah.
And so to be up in the know-how on all of these is a little bit hard. Do you have a go-to porter or a go-to stout?
And not really. I just try to look for ones that are things that I haven't had.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, the dry stout. I mean, you're basically thinking of like Guinness at that point.
Mm-hmm.
It's your Irish stout essentially. I've had the sweet ones like your milk stout. I've had oatmeal ones. So I really don't have a favorite, to be honest with you. I just like going and saying, "Hey, give me this one."
Hmm.
But I guess some of the differences that I also looked up between those, your dry stouts essentially your coffee bitterness, they give you kind of a creamy mouthfeel. Whereas the sweet stout, which one did you have? You had the oatmeal one, right? That's the Founders.
Double chocolate coffee oatmeal. So I'm assuming it's a sweet stout.
No, that's an oatmeal one. So
Oh,
essentially, yeah, they brewed it with malted oats.
hmm.
So that is part of the oatmeal stout. You get a little bit of a nutty flavor, but the sweet stout, those are the ones that are added with lactose, which I did not know that one either. So it kind of thickens it up a little bit. And then obviously the imperial stout, that's which I didn't know this one either. So it's a stronger stout, and the imperial term came from Russia because it was the style's popularity within the Russian monarchy. So
Well, look at that. The more you know. Huh.
I know, right? This is a very educational podcast today.
Making my brain grow, man.
So, what are some stuff that you had? You had things that you can pair stouts and porters up with?
Actually, I do. I went to Webstarant store, so like restaurant, but with the word web. And this is a beer and food pairing guide. And this just kind of also will hit off of last episode too, where we went into other types of beers. We'll go over what they have here. Just like the basic things that they recommend. So if you're going to drink a light lager, you want spicy food, burgers, salads. If you're going for like a wheat beer, spicy foods or fruity desserts, IPAs, steak, barbecue, and Mexican food, amber ales, pizza, fried food, and smoked pork, dark lagers, pizza, burgers, and hearty stews, brown ales, sausage, sushi, and fish. Now, for the episode that we're on today with Porters and Stouts, the Porters, they recommend seafood, coffee flavored desserts, and gamey meats. So, like your venison and like wild hog and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. All right.
And for stouts, chocolate desserts, shellfish, and Mexican is what they recommend.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know for me, the most recent one that I had, and the cool thing is the Untapped app, you can track different beers. You can track which ones that you have.
Yeah.
And
so maybe just start back with some of the beers that you tried due to the Untapped app.
Yeah. All right, man. So one of the things you gotta that I look for is, and I keep track of all mine, was it's in the Untapped app. So it's not or anything, but you can track what beers you drink, and you can compare them against other people as well. So, Untapped is something for the people that really want to track their beers and see what other friends are drinking or get ratings from different beers too. Mm-hmm. And the cool thing about it is that you can look back at which ones that you've had, and the most I had was back right after Christmas. I went and got a black chocolate stout from Brooklyn Brewery. Mm-hmm. And man, that thing looked like chocolate milk. Like that poured out. It seriously looked like someone took dark chocolate, like Hershey's, and just filled half of it and then put the rest with milk and then stirred it up. So it was pretty good. I thought it was all right. It had a little bit of some extra bitterness that I didn't really expect, but the one that I had before that though, awesome. It was 15% and it was from Goose Island Company.
Goose Island,
one of the Bourbon County brands. Yeah, Goose Island. So it was their Bourbon County brand stout.
Interesting.
And then actually, since you were talking about Founders, the one before I had that one was actually a maple mac and fudge Founders Brewing Stout. It was a stout double coffee imperial.
Oh.
So that was really good too. But for anybody that wants to track their own stuff, definitely download the Untapped app and you will be able to see what other people think about the beers that you drink.
Maybe that's something we could get going too, is later on down the line, is we could have something that links our Untapped to the foodies, and that way they could compare it to us.
Yeah, that could work.
Yeah. Just a thought.
So, yeah.
Hmm.
So, but want to know some fun facts about some stouts?
I do.
All right, man. So stouts are good for you. So one of the first ones that I looked up and I found is that not too long ago in Ireland, pregnant women were recommended to drink a glass of Guinness every day to strengthen themselves and their baby.
Is that because of like, does it like provide extra nourishment?
So yeah, it's a little known fact apparently that the polysaccharides in the barley can help stimulate the prolactin. So while the brewery has gone on record denying any health claims, there was a study done at the University of Wisconsin that showed that this might actually help to reduce the risk of heart attacks and blood clots. But I definitely would not recommend drinking a glass of Guinness every day if you're pregnant. I would definitely talk to your doctor about that one.
Yes. And that is coming from somebody with an actual doctorate degree.
So another one too, stouts they used to be prescribed for post-op people due to its iron content. So that's pretty cool. You get some surgery and the doctor says, here, man, drink some Guinness or drink some stouts, whatever.
Man, dude, doctors in the day used to be so cool. Now, like, I go to the
prescribe you cocaine
yeah. Say like, listen to your heartbeat. Doctor, I'm having a little bit of trouble sleeping at night. Oh yeah, it's because you got ghost in your blood. Do some cocaine about it. You'll be just fine. Nowadays, doctor, I'm having trouble sleeping at night. Cool. Here's some freaking Tylenol PM, some Percocet, and just don't get addicted to painkillers. Dude, like,
yeah.
Maybe just go tell me to run a mile before I go to bed. Maybe, like, fuck.
Another crazy fun fact, apparently in Africa, this seems to be considered an aphrodisiac, man.
Hold on.
Sometimes it's nicknamed Viagra.
So you broke up on me, and I'm going to have to edit this out, but I need it for clarification. Because what it sounded like was in Africa, piss is an aphrodisiac. And that can't be right. That cannot be what I heard.
No, I said Guinness is considered an aphrodisiac.
Thank God.
It's sometimes nicknamed Viagra.
Woof. Sweet baby Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, apparently 40% of the world's Guinness is brewed in Africa, and Nigeria is the biggest market.
Wow.
Falling just behind the UK.
That
I did not know that. That
surprises me.
I don't understand that.
It must be like
it
very careful on how much Guinness they drink, because like after like 4, it's not working for anybody.
So it's not approved by the FDA, but you know what? It might amp up your libido, and it's good for you. It's got healing qualities. So grab yourself a pint of stout and enjoy it.
Oh yeah. Huh.
Yeah, I can't remember where it was, but someone did a study on Guinness particularly, and they said that it has everything that you need to survive. So if you are on a stranded island where you only have Guinness, I've just off of that.
Good. My one friend many moons ago used to refer to Guinness as Thanksgiving in a bottle. And that's it's fairly accurate. So
I would agree just enough.
Just
I feel
enough?
as if there's other beers out there that I could also say the same thing. That would be stouts. So
I would agree. So this is called breakfast. That's on the Porters. just doing a quick looky look here. So because unless we had a next segue into another topic, I was going to talk about the top 10 porters because I've actually tried some of those on the top 10. And then the top 10 stouts. And I wanted to double check to see where the Spounders landed, and it's not showing up on the top 10, which means there's better beer out there than what I'm having. Number 6, if I'm not mistaken, used to be local to you and I. Yeah. Going on, we went to Beer Advocate, and I just typed in top rated beers, porter, and it brought me up an American style list. And number 6 on this list comes from a company called Great Lakes Brewing Company. You remember them?
Yes, Great Lakes.
Yes. They're Edmunds Fitzgerald, which is a famous shipwreck, is number 6 on this list for top 10 porter. And I've had that before on tap, and that's a really good beer.
I too have had that porter on tap as well. And it really is a good beer.
Yes.
So, and I've had it in bottles before too.
What would you prefer, bottle or tap on that
one? When we're talking about stouts or porters, I'd rather have it on tap.
Same. Something about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the next one?
Above that is a little brand called Vanilla Joe from Sante Argius Rustic Ales. Never heard of. Number 4, we've got Twilight of the Idols from Hill Farmstead Brewery. Never heard of. Last Snow by Funky Buddha Brewery. That's
I have not had any of them.
Yeah. And number 2 has something that I'm really interested in because I like all 3 of these things in this title. Sorry, all 4. Maple Bacon Coffee Porter by Funky Buddha Brewery is number 2. And then number 1 on our porter side is Everett Porter from Hill Farmstead.
Not had 6.
Yeah.
Looks like I need to start finding some of these beers.
Right. Well, it's actually funny because I'm looking at it right now.
Now, what about the stouts?
Well, let me finish this real quick. So,
yeah,
the jump up from position 4 to position 3. Position 4 has 1,142 ratings with an average rating of 4.34. Number 3 has 2,129 ratings with an average rating of 4.49. 2, 2,185 ratings with an average rating of 4.49. Number 1, 2,814 ratings with an average rating of 4.51. And so those are all extremely close to each other. The Everett Porter might just be a beer that's more available than these ones from Funky Buddha Brewery.
Yeah, that's probably true.
So a little something to look at. So, because the one that we've both had has 6,807 ratings and scored a 4.26.
Okay.
So, kind of interesting, and that was number 6, and your number 1 spot's not even 20 points higher, And then when we go over to stouts, let's see, number 6, we've got Onyx Coffee Stout from Ozark Beer Company. Number 5, we have a chocolate peanut butter stout from Wrap Brew Company. Number 4, 10 layer from RAR Brewing. Number 3, The Awakening from Angry Chair Brewing. Number 2 is Double Shot Coconut Flavored from Treehouse Brewing. And then number 1 is Double Shot from Treehouse Brewing as well.
I have not had any of those. So apparently my stout is a little different than the people who are doing that rating.
Right. Well, and like if I scroll down here, trying to see if there's any names that I see. I think I've had Java Oats from Barrel Theory Beer Company. That ranked in at number 22. Bourbon Barrel Aged Stout from Foothills Brewing Company,
Okay.
number 35. German Chocolate Cake from Bottle Logic Brewing. I know I've had. That ranked in at 44. These are all the ones that I'm kind of seeing that I recognize the name of. But just in the top 6, I kind of noticed something. So back to our ratings thing. In between number 3, because in the Porters, you had like a 0.20 deviation from number 6 to like number 3.
Okay.
But here, in between number 3 and number 2, there's a 20-point deviation. Whereas the Awakening from Angry Chair Brewing has 147 ratings with an average of 4.31. And our Double Shot Coconut has 27 ratings with an average rating of 4.57.
Okay.
Now, another thing to look out here is the Double Shot made by that Treehouse Brewing Company as well has an average rate or has ratings of 1,174 with an average rating of 4.55. So it could possibly become overtaken by that coconut beer, which already has a higher average rating, just not been rating near enough times.
Well, when this is off of Beer Advocate, you said?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm sure that they probably update or something that long.
If I was a little more internet savvy, I'd be able to tell you. But fortunately, I kind of was born with the case of the dum-dums. So.
Well, cool, man. That seems like we've come around full circle with our beer episode.
I think you're right.
So,
And I kind of feel like that's a good way to end it. Like I had a solid beer. I got me a nice little buzz going on and talked about beer and having a good time.
so we'll have to look into next week when we talk about another topic. Hopefully you learned something today. I know that I learned a couple things, especially when it came to stouts and porters, and always trying to continually improve my knowledge on this stuff. So you have any last comments?
I have a question for you and the foodies before we go. Those of you who are beer connoisseurs, what's the furthest you've ever traveled to pick up beer?
Furthest I've ever traveled to pick up beer? Oh man, I don't know, probably a couple hours.
Okay.
It's probably going down to Houston or something along those lines.
Now, is that just because they had a specific beer you were looking for, or you were just kind of like in that area?
Well, I mean, if you really wanted to say, I would say 21 hours, because where I'm from, I can't get that Hershey's Porter from Yuengling. And that's I drove all the way up to my parents' house in Pennsylvania to get a couple cases of that stuff to bring back down. So,
but you were going there also to see your parents.
Doesn't matter. I still drove 21 hours to get there.
You know what? I'm gonna have to text Mama Bear and be like, "Yo, he didn't want to see you. He wanted that Hershey's beer." She'll probably understand because your Mama Bear's cool like that. But still.
No, the next time I get down that way, I'll certainly hit up Mama Bear and see what she's up to.
Yeah. Reason I ask is because I know somebody that travels fairly consistently about 4 hours if our local area is out of stock to go and get beer.
4 hours. That's way out of my range, I guess.
Right.
Probably 2 hours would probably be my max thing.
Right. So is that 2 hours one way or 2 hours total trip?
I'd go 2 hours one way, I guess.
Yeah.
But I'd make a day out of it though. Like I would drive the 2 hours. I'd buy whatever beer or anything I need and say, okay, what are stuff that I could do down here for the day, and then head back.
Right. Well,
I'm
yeah,
not going to just drive 2 hours just to pick up beer, then drive 2 hours back. Like that sounds boring.
right. Well, foodies, let us know if you've ever done something like that. What's the furthest you'd go to try a number 1 rated beer?
Yeah.
So I think that closes out this episode. I've been the Meat Viking.
And this is Professor Porkloin, man, aka Dr. Chef Hubs. We are signing out.
Yeah, buddies.